him. He doesn't want to go though.
Yeah, got you.
Hi Nick, morning.
Morning, morning. How are we?
Very good.
Good, Nick.
Slept better last night?
Few beers last night.
Nah, it's no fun without you. Ajit's an old man.
Why not?
Day 3, always considered the most important day for any test match, and given where this series stands, an extremely important day for the series. Looking at it on ESPN Cricket for Matchday. Ajit Agarkar in studio with me, Nick Compton in London, Melinda Farrell outside the Ageas Bowl in Southampton. We have an excellent test match to talk about, so let's get straight into it. Which team, I asked the question Nick last night, which team would sleep better? He said Keaton Jennings would have slept better. But I was looking up some numbers, and India having chased, only 170 as their best fourth innings successful chase ever in England. So this is a tricky day for both teams.
Yeah, I think that's why they would be thankful that England did concede as many as they did with those last two Indian wickets, because ideally England should have got a 20-30, even a 40-run lead and might have been in a much stronger position. As it happens, it's evenly matched, but it's probably a more important day for India, considering they are trailing 2-1 in this series. If they have a tough day today, the series could be gone from them. So evenly matched in this test match, but a huge day for India.
We were so in awe of Pujara that I think overnight, when we had some time to think, it sunk in that 78 runs were scored with Bumrah and Ishant Sharma at the crease, and of all the Indian batsmen to score or accelerate with the tail with them, it was Pujara. It seems like the kind of game England would really be, if they lose it, they'd really think of that session.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know whether they were a bit complacent. They might be able to answer that a bit better, because when you pick the cream of the Indian batting, you almost expect to fold, especially with Pujara at the other end, you think he's not going to score as quickly as maybe a Virat Kohli or a Hardik Pandya would perhaps do with the tail. And I thought they, took the foot off a little bit, and whether it cost them, we'll find out today. But luckily, they didn't concede too many more. But India would be happier where they ended eventually.
That having been said, there still seems to be some sentiment from English cricketers that you wouldn't mind being in the English camp. I saw a Michael Vaughan tweet, Nick Compton, last night, which said exactly that. I wouldn't mind being in England's shoes. But then again, I don't always agree with what Michael Vaughan says. I don't know if you do. How are you doing?
Morning, guys. Great day today in England. The sun's out. It's a cracking day for batting. Let's hope England can get in and really get a good start. I think England are quietly. I had a long think about it last night, and I thought about how to approach a day like today, particularly being an opening batsman like Keaton and Alistair, having been in that position where you're playing for your place. It's not fun. There's some nervous moments. He'll be thinking about his approach, but I just hope today that he goes out there and tries to score runs. I know it seems like an obvious thing to say, but having watched him over the last couple of years, I've got to know him very well, and when he's played well to get himself into the England team, he's been quite proactive. He is quite limited, but he does have a way of being quite proactive. His debut 100 in India, he played reverse sweeps. He seemed quite free-flowing, and of course international cricket can put that pressure on you, but I hope today he sees it as a nothing-to-lose kind of opportunity. Go out there, put some pressure on Ashwin. I think Ashwin's going to be the key today. He's a smart bowler, and if you just look at the wicket, it's kind of starting to turn a bit. It's going to be difficult. I think if Cook and Keaton just try and defend him, I think it could be very tough, particularly when you've got a little bit of a deficit. I think if they can get their on the front foot early on, Keaton can get some runs going, get a sweep away, take it to them, get a boundary away. Suddenly you just find yourself being a bit more proactive. That edge suddenly goes through gully for 4, and he's away. And I think that's the best way for him and England to approach today. Get the runs on the board. Once they get that lead, India will start worrying, because that wicket's not going to get any better.
Well, we've had some time. It's the kind of session, the last one of day 2, that we were all so amazed by what Pujara had done, and the fact that this test match was so evenly balanced. As time went on, you started thinking, okay, which team would have actually been the happier, who would have slept better last night. Melinda Farrell always looks like she's had a wonderful night's rest. She looks brilliant in the morning. Mel, wonderful to have you on the show as always. You heard from the teams last evening, from Moeen Ali, from Sanjay Bangar from Pujara. Any thoughts or anything on how that session, that final session yesterday, might very well have turned the course of this test match perhaps?
Well, it's turned it one way back again. I mean, this test is turning out to be an absolute ripper, isn't it? The way it's gone backwards and forwards. I think you would have thought that India would have felt themselves in a pretty bad position at one point when they'd lost all those wickets. Probably most frustrated Virat Kohli in the way that he got out when he was sort of set fair, really, you'd imagine, once he'd been there for as long as he had. But that Pujara was amazing. I mean, six hours, I think it was, nearly 6 hours or around 6 hours that he batted out there. And you know, he gets so much stick about his intent, doesn't he, and the pace at which he scores. It's ridiculous. We're not even halfway through this test. We're only this is the morning of the third day. Plenty of time, and so he really has gone back. It's the theme of the players who are dropped and coming back and performing. Pujara is one of those. For England, it's been Sam Curran and Moeen Ali, and all those players have really come back in and made the most of it. Moeen certainly loving being the player who isn't considered the first spinner, and he indicated that yesterday. It's funny, he's one of those players who plays a lot better, I guess, when he feels that there's less expectation on him.
Okay, we will hear from Moeen Ali in just a bit, but given the day was all about Cheteshwar Pujara and India's batting that has managed to take a first innings lead, the batting coach came out, so let's hear what Sanjay Bangar had to say.
Well, I mean, first thing about Pujara, right from where he got in to play the Lord's Test match to the way he batted in Nottingham, and whatever he carried here, I think he showed a lot of composure. And clarity of thought, great discipline in his in his judgment outside off stump, as well as he executed the shots really well, because you saw a great mix of caution and aggression in that innings, and you also saw another facet of his batsmanship wherein he showed us a glimpse of what he could do when he was batting with the tail. So all in all, it would have been a very, very satisfying effort for him. And as far as the second question is concerned, yes, losing wicket at the stroke of tea was a setback, and then again 3 in a trot, because in a span of 15 runs we lost 4 wickets. So from a position of strength, we were sort of staring at conceding a lead, but credit to Bumrah and Ishant, they hung in and they negotiated the spinners really well and got us to a decent lead, I should say.
Sanjay Bangar's thoughts, an extended version of that press conference will tell you how he did speak of certain aspects of Pujara's batting that had to be worked on, which seemed like a lot of work in progress, suggesting that balance was an issue, footwork was an issue.
Yeah, I mean, whatever he's done, it's worked, obviously. Yeah. I think the runs in Nottingham must have helped his confidence as well. Having been left out of the first test, then, you know, got a couple of really good balls at Lord's, and then got out hooking first innings in Nottingham. So that 70 that he got must have helped his confidence, and we know what he can do. You know, it was an ideal sort of situation for him, and fortunately everyone's starting to agree a little bit. I don't understand what the fuss about strike rate is in Test cricket.
Put an end to that nonsense.
Yeah, so he showed what his value is for India, and hopefully people remember that innings and not take off every time there's a failure. So you've got to keep that in mind, a particular value of every player.
It seems, Nick, that depending on how a player looks, he tends to be given that longer leash. So Pujara doesn't look the best player. So when even I would say even through the course of his 100, he never looked fluent, but he looked very effective. Whereas a KL Rahul looks fluent in a 20 or so not. These players tend to get shorter leashes at times, and probably something that needs to now be done away with as far as Test cricket is concerned.
Yeah, it was something I was just about to come on to, and yeah, I guess it's easy sitting here, but you look at a guy like KL Rahul, clearly has the raw materials, has a lot of talent. You know, the way he hits a cover drive, people sit up and think, oh, this guy's got something, but he's averaging 16 or whatever it is. And if someone like Pujara was averaging 16, he wouldn't be in the team. So it's very strange when we look at what sort of qualities we're trying to identify nowadays. People want to see boundaries, want to see you know, those sort of big shots, fours, etc., and players that can get on with it. But actually, the game of Test cricket hasn't changed. It's 5 days long. It requires a discipline. It requires patience. And, you know, I keep banging on about it, and I have done for a couple of years, but those qualities are going out of the game. How many Pujaras are around now? You know, the likes of Alistair Cook, you know, they seem to be a dying breed. Okay, Alistair hasn't played in that fashion for a while and hasn't been as consistent, but that type of player isn't someone that people are looking for. They keep wanting to find the next Stokes or Joe Root, and don't get me wrong, we'd all like to play like them, but you can't have 11 Joe Roots and Ben Stokes, you know, because when it's good, it's very good, but when it's bad, it's bad. And I think that the aim of the game, particularly as a test nation, is to be consistent in all surfaces, in all countries. Those are the best teams, and I think someone like Pujara is going to give you more good days than bad days, without doubt. So you need him playing well, you need to back him through the good times and the bad, and I thought the way he played yesterday as a guy who admires quality batsmanship was just majestic. It was flawless. It was a real technician's innings, and you know, I can't say more about his innings.
Those sorts of qualities which Nick talks about actually come into play when there's a contest between bat and ball, which doesn't happen that often. I mean, ball has dominated this series, and that's why you get to see different qualities of the player that you perhaps require, or every team does require those sorts of quality. Hopefully, we see more contests where ball dominates a little bit more.
There was a tweet from Sanjay Manjrekar and some comments on air that seemed to have created a bit of a stir on Pujara's 100.
Really?
Yes, but that's typical of Sanjay, suggesting that if a player feels he doesn't have the talent, look at Cheteshwar Pujara and there's your role model. I think I know what Sanjay is trying to say, but this definition of talent, when you associate it with the Pujara versus, like Nick said, KL Rahul or Virat Kohli or Rohit Sharma, even who we've said are such naturally talented players, is the definition of talent that's getting us a bit irked? Or?
Yeah, I think so. I wouldn't worry about. I mean, everyone looks at what a talent is differently. Yeah. It's eventually what works for the team and works for the player is what is important. Eventually, what you give to the team is more important than how you look. Yeah, I don't know I can't get into Sanjay's head.
Yeah, nobody can. Yeah.
But
I think if I can, maybe it's about
if you don't have any sort of talent, you're not going to succeed at this level. Now that may vary from person to person how they look, but to get to this level, you've got to have some sort of talent.
Yeah. Let me go to Melinda Farrell. Of course, she would have followed the social media stir as well, and you know, it's probably, if I am to think for Sanjay, it's how much natural ability you have versus, you know, and therefore the range and whatnot, and as against, you know, the other aspects of what you do to try and still be effective. You got anything on this, Mel?
Yeah, well, I think talent's the wrong word. I think it's purely about aesthetics. I mean, you take, for example, a batsman like Steve Smith, who can be really horrible to watch in so many ways, and in fact maybe that's what distracts batsmen sometimes. You look at even a Chanderpaul in times gone past. You look at Yunus Khan a couple of years ago when he was hopping around the crease like a frog on a bed of hot coals. But those players may have issues with their aesthetics at times, and it's not that, like, you know, that sexy kind of flashing drives that we might see from others. But you know, that's people sort of, I guess, confuse aesthetics with talent sometimes, and I don't think technique can be a great thing, but there are different kinds of techniques. Some players use different techniques to get through whatever issues they have. So I just look at some of those other players who weren't necessarily great to look at, but they still managed to be effective and get the job done, and that's what we saw here. That's why I was laughing about all that stuff with Pujara. I've seen that with him before, and I stress we're just only 2 days into this test. There's plenty of time, and I think England would love to have a player of the kind that could stick around and anchor and frustrate the opposite bowling attack the way that Pujara is able to do.
I mean, they've had a man for 156 test matches, but he's just not finding enough form. But Alistair Cook's been another great example of exactly that. Not necessarily the best to look at aesthetically, but my God, what a player he's been for England. Let's hope that we see at least the best of him at some point. in this series. Moeen Ali, another man who narrative would have been different had England managed to bowl India out for 180, 190, but he did end up speaking to the press at the end of the day. And yes, Mel Farrell's already made the point. He said something interesting about how he feels better, whether he's the first or second spinner in the team. Have a listen.
Yeah, I've actually loved being back at Worcester, having a good stint there, and just getting the form back with the bat and the ball. And I've really enjoyed going back to county cricket and having a bit of a break. And it's always nice to get a call up when you're in decent nick with a bat and ball, and that's exactly, you can almost have that confidence to come into the game. And it's always, I think it's doing what county cricket should be doing. It give you the confidence from a player and to come back into the test side and to perform. I think it's more believing that you're not a bad player after one bad winter, and many players have gone through that, and for me it was just moving on and hopefully make you a better player, make you a stronger character, and I've moved on. I moved on pretty early from that, and it was about going out there and performing for my country, knowing that I can do well here in England, and I've done it before. And yeah, it was a bad winter, but these things can happen to anybody, and I just shrugged it off and tried to be better. I went to Worcester and sort of cleared my mind and to try and get better, and that's exactly what I feel I've been doing.
Well, the one thing that England need to remember now is no matter what kind of form Moeen Ali is in or what he's up to, whenever India come around in Southampton, just play him. 13 wickets in 2 matches at an average of just under 15. 2 5-wicket hauls. His best was a 6 for 67. He's just gone 1 short of that. And if he would have bowled a bit more yesterday, Ajit, he might have even got the 6th wicket.
Yeah, I found it a bit strange after India lost that when he got Ishant out. Probably didn't bowl as much as he should have. I think England approached it a little bit wrong. Maybe they just expected the wickets to fall after all the good batters had gotten out. And it's come back to bite them, but really good performance. Really good performance when England needed it. 246 wasn't enough in that first inning, so they needed to make sure that India don't get too far ahead. In the process, they almost should have got a lead, but terrific performance.
Let's have a quick word from Mel and Nick too about Moeen Ali. Mel, I'll go back to you. Heard Moeen Ali's words, and yes, that a point that he makes about feeling better as the second spinner. Does he feel like the second spinner? He's out-bowled Adil Rashid.
Well, Adil Rashid, would go back and look at Edgbaston where Adil Rashid hardly did anything. And it must be a strange time for Adil Rashid to be brought in like this, and then Moeen comes in and has the performance that he has. I think he might get a bit more help too. I think there are some footmarks that may help Moeen Ali when India are batting last in this test too. So I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up taking a few more wickets. Sometimes you feel too, you saw some of the players try to attack Moeen. We've seen this before. I remember when Australia were here a few years ago as well. Players tend to try to attack Moeen. It's in almost we'll get on top of you kind of way, and you've just seen it backfire so many times. I think that's probably the best though that Moeen's bowled in a test match in quite a long time. How do England harness that? How do they get him to have the confidence to go, okay, I'm going to do this, but I'm going to sort of be leading the spin attack? Because you can't just have another spinner coming in all the time just so that Moeen can play that role. It's not really going to work, and it's not always going to work in conditions here. So I'm not sure how they do that, but I would expect him to have a bit more to influence this match as it goes on.
All right, many thanks, Belinda Farrell. We'll let you go off. You have covering duties to do now for this wonderful day of Test cricket. We will see you and hear from you again as this test goes on. Nick Compton, I'll take on Mel's thoughts from what she just said. Moeen saying feels so much better when he's not the front line spin bowler. Do you understand that in any way, that tomorrow if you remove Adil Rashid and make Moeen Ali be just Moeen to carry the spin attack, he'll suddenly be a different bowler?
Yeah, I think it's more a state of mindset, really. I mean, Mo can say he feels better as the second spinner. If that's a way to get himself into the right mindset, to take that pressure off and be able to just go out there. Look at Mo. He's an incredibly popular character, a very relaxed kind of guy. Everyone loves having him in the change room. And you look at the way he bats best. He's very chilled. He's very relaxed. So you know, it's a case of management as well, just making sure that he goes out and enjoys his cricket. You know, there doesn't need to be unnecessary pressure. There's so much on you anyway when you're playing international cricket. I think maybe Mo sort of cons himself a little bit that he's the second spinner, and that gets the best out of him. And Mel's absolutely right. There are going to be times where two spinners don't play, and that may be the case. Potentially Sri Lanka, you'll have another spinner with him, so that might help him again. But I think there are going to be times where, you know, you've got to almost let certain players be their free spirit. And I think Mo's one of those players where you just let him get on with his thing. You know, he might not always be that consistent performer every single day. But I think the expectations now of cricketers and international cricketers that they've got to perform all the time. He had a bad series in the winter by his own assessment. And that happens. You know, that happens. It doesn't mean he's a bad player. He's come back. He's played very well for Worcestershire. And we see him performing now. But I think for him to really excel in the second innings, there is going to be some pressure on him. So, you know, he's got 5 wickets in the first innings, got England right back into this game. But I think the way England have to really go about this second innings, and particularly the bowling opportunity and batting opportunity that they've got now, is they've got to get a lead. And the best way to get a lead, I think, is they've got to be positive. They've got to do something quite special. They can't just go out there defensively and hope that this game is going to eventuate and they're going to win. They've got to go out there and score some runs, get a lead. And then I think there's a real game on here.
Well, it's all about how many they get that will decide how good Moeen Ali might be in that fourth innings. We'll talk about that first session of play, about Keaton Jennings and Alistair Cook on the other side of the break. So stay with us on ESPN Cricket for Matchday.
Catch the best of the England-India series on ESPN Cricket Info. Match highlights, clips and the best.
Fast approaching the first session of play at the Ageas Bowl on day 3 in what should be a pivotal day to decide which way this test match turns. Now, speaking of turn, it all depends on how our Ashwin bowls in this innings and Moeen Ali in the fourth. The evidence that we've seen of Mo Ali, it's all about spin and pace at Southampton. We'll give you some numbers on that as we have the conversation further with Nick Compton and Ajit Agarkar. In the second innings in Southampton, we're looking at a strike rate of 40 for the spinners and an average of 22. Of course, it's a small sample size, remember, because there's not been too much test cricket in Southampton, but still numbers that should give you plenty to think about. So, would you go with our Ashwin straight off as you start the day? Two left-handers, you know the rough is outside their leg stump. How would you like to?
No, I think the two seamers for me. I think Ishan's bowled really well to both the left-handers, and Bumrah, you know, that second over of his again beat Jennings a couple of times. So, no, I'll start the new ball with them, and if you see that the openers are a little bit comfortable, then get Ashwin straight on. But you've got to get the seamers on. I think both of them have bowled well to both left-handers, and Ashwin, apart from that first test where he got Cook out twice, hasn't really, you know, had a lot of impact against left-handers. So not to start with, but I mean, needless to say, he's going to play a key role today.
Nick, if you're Keaton Jennings, I know you already said this at the top of the show, you've also just tweeted about it. He's a man who's now arguably fighting for his test career. He's not in form, he's just managed to survive a few overs. What's his state of mind, and what do you think he's best suited to do to try and make this innings count? Would he have got in earlier, tried to have a bit of a knock? Would he have stayed on after yesterday? Or is it just, don't talk to anyone, don't think of anything, just show up? What would Keaton Jennings be thinking right now?
I think one of Keaton Jennings' main strengths is his state of mind. He stays really calm. He's got a strong mind. He's quite mature. I think mentally he's a strong guy, and I think that that's what's got him to this place. So I don't think he'll be somebody that will do anything differently. I think he's a man of repetition. Likes his throwdowns, likes to repeat his routines. So he'll do his drills in the net this morning. But I think mentally, we all know that scoring runs is about your approach. And you know, if you look at the patterns of how he's got out, the way that he's, you know, almost not played many shots and got dismissed. There's been quite a defensive, negative approach to his batting. And I think if I were him, and potentially I hope he takes this approach, going in today, he must think to himself, look, we're behind India. I have nothing to lose, really. I've got to look to score runs. Me just surviving today, hanging around on a wicket that's a little bit slow, isn't really going to benefit the team. What's the way that I can benefit the team? And if I can go out there and Ashwin's on and I start coming down the wicket and I sweep him potentially, maybe the odd reverse sweep, which he plays very well, suddenly gets a few boundaries away, gets to 10 or 15, or, you know, perhaps the similar amount of balls, suddenly he's away and those shackles may just be broken. And I feel that's the only way that Keaton can go about today. And that is the best way for him to benefit the side. He's got nothing to lose. He knows that he's playing for his position. He may as well just go, you know what, I'm going to have a go today. If the ball's there to hit it, I'm going to go for it. And if it doesn't come off, well, I gave it my best shot.
And to be fair, Alistair Cook did look the best he's looked in this series in that first innings. So you'd think that this could be a good day for Cook also.
Yeah, but 100% agree. I think it's the approach eventually. You know, I think Keaton Jennings was just looking to survive. Yeah. And when as a bowler, you know, the guy is just looking to survive, you invariably get the ball in the right place more often than not when there's no pressure on you as a bowler. So, yeah, you've got to be positive. Shot selection is something each batter will decide how to go about it. But the intent has to be to score runs every time there's an opportunity. If you put that pressure on the bowler, as soon as there are a few runs scored, India will be under a lot more pressure than England would be. A few catchers come out, makes your life a little bit easier. I think same with Cook. I think Cook's obviously looked, you know, I mean, someone who's played over 150 tests will know his game very well.
Though, 13, not 21, 29, 17s.
Yeah, that's the worst part about it. Those 21s, 29s, 17s. You would think that Cook spent enough time in the middle and then getting out. But yeah, the 3 or 4 overs that felt last evening felt that the pitch is still pretty good.
This pitch is slowed down though?
Yeah, it's always been on the slower side.
How does that affect you as a fast bowler?
Yeah, it's the movement, isn't it? The swing. I think the Indians fortunately have a bit more pace in their lineup, which has helped them, whether it's a Shami, Bumrah or Ishant. It'll be interesting to find out how much it slowed down today, because Pujara looked quite comfortable towards the end of that innings yesterday. It's the movement. Whether if it swings, it looks like a good day, although it swung both days in spite of the sun being out. That will be the key for India today.
Very well. So you're starting with the seamers. Nick Compton, very quickly, you agree with that? Start with seam on both sides, or would you want some spin at one end?
I'm going to start with Ashwin, and I'll tell you why. He's the key for me today for India. You got to get him into the game, get him confident. If he can get an early wicket, you suddenly got your main man with overs under his belt. I think Kohli needs to give him a little bit of that confidence. So I would go with him.
Very well. Many thanks to Nick Compton and to Ajit Agarkar. We will get their thoughts on our lunchtime show. This first session will decide the conversation for that, and we'll see which team has a happier lunchtime on day 3. If you're watching in India, make sure you catch clips and highlights as they happen on ESPNcricinfo.com. Also download our mobile app. Focusing our attention now to England's second innings in the first session of the third day of this test match at the Ageas Bowl.